Well, I can't wait for you to connect with Taryn Strong. She's the co-founder of She Recovers with her mother, Dawn Nickel, and she also founded Yoga for Recovery. We're going to go deep into her history with disordered eating, with codependency, with alcohol and drug addiction, and we're going to move through her story talking about yoga and how it has really empowered her and helped her to gain the confidence that she was always looking for. Here we go with Taryn Strong.
Here, we want to show you what's possible in the world of sobriety. We introduce you to the various tools, programs, and resources available, because there are way more options than you may even realize. We want you to find the one that works for you.
And we do it through people who share their pathway to recovery and will help you find your path to freedom. Because getting sober can feel hard enough. You don't have to do it alone. I'm Sarah Roberts.
And I'm Roger DeVoe, and this is Sobriety Starts Here.
Well, Taryn Strong, I am so excited to be talking with you. You are someone that I connected with a while back through She Recovers, and I just wanted to have a chance to sit down with you and talk about your Yoga for Recovery and all of the other amazing projects you're working on, and I really wanted to dig into your story, so welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. So let's get right into it. Yoga for Recovery. What is that? How does it work? What's the experience? And who does it serve?
Yeah, so for me, and I'll share this when I share my story, of course, but my first yoga class was absolutely life-changing. And for me, I really had this powerful aha moment, because in my recovery journey and the people closest to me in their recovery journey, what I realized was in the West, when somebody's recovering or on any type of healing path, we've gotten really good at addressing the mind and the spirit. If somebody's due to recovery, generally we recommend go to a 12-step program or go to therapy. And those are both wonderful tools. And we will receive amazing benefits, of course, and lives are going to be saved from those. When I discovered yoga, though, I realized that we had forgotten about the body. And the body needs to be addressed for many reasons, including depending what our addictions was or depending what we're recovering from. Of course, in this case, we're talking about sobriety. We have to address kind of the damage that we have done to our bodies in our active addictions. And we also have to address the fact that our body stores everything that happens to us in our life. The good, the bad, the ugly, the beautiful, we store it in our bodies, in our muscles, in our connective tissues. So we need to have this holistic approach to recovery where we're addressing the body, the mind, and the spirit. And the wonderful thing about yoga is that for those of you that have experienced it, in one class, you are getting that holistic approach. You're addressing all things.
Yeah.
So Yoga for Recovery, when I first discovered yoga, I fell in love with it. Knew right away, when I grow up, I want to teach Yoga for Recovery. I want to focus my studies on this. I want to help people who are recovering from, at this time, I was just focusing on the lens of drug and alcohol addiction because, again, that was my experience. My scope of recovery has since changed because we are all recovering from something, is what we say at She Recovers. But I really wanted to focus my studies on yoga for recovery. I was seeing a lot of similarities between yoga philosophies and 12-step philosophies. I'm not in a 12-step program. I grew up in a 12-step home, which again, I'll talk about soon, but I saw the similarities and just saw the need to really offer yoga to as many people as possible. Yoga for Recovery, my style that I have, I guess I feel silly saying this, but I guess I've created it. Because when I started teaching and practicing yoga, there wasn't Yoga for Recovery. It was kind of this underground thing. So I saw the need and developed my own. My Yoga for Recovery, it's a trauma-informed style of teaching. And this is really important because we're very lucky right now, like I mentioned, that we might go to our doctor or to our therapist or whoever, and they might recommend yoga because they know that it's good for us and it'll be helpful for us. But sometimes, if you think about it, a yoga class can actually be triggering. If you go to just any drop-in yoga class, you don't know the teacher, you don't know the other people in the room. Sometimes teachers do, and there's nothing wrong with this at all, but sometimes there are hands-on physical adjustments that happen. So if you think of somebody who's in recovery from sexual trauma, for example, and they're in a really vulnerable position, such as a down dog or a child's pose, and somebody comes behind them and puts their hands on their hips, that's not relaxing. That's not healing at all. It's quite the opposite. So seeking a trauma-informed yoga teacher is really, really important. And I think it's the main component of what makes yoga for recovery.
Wow.
It's also...
Yeah, before you keep going, I want to stay on that point for a moment. So for people who don't live on the West Coast of Canada and can't get access to you specifically, how would we go about finding a trauma-informed yoga class if that's something that we really want to be looking for?
Yeah, so what you could do is you can do a Google search, trauma-informed yoga in your neighborhood. A lot of yoga people, yoga therapists, would probably have it. You could also go check out the yoga studios in your neighborhood. And yoga studios, typically, all of the teachers have bios. And in the bios, the teachers will say what types of certifications they have. And if they have trauma-informed yoga, they would say it in their bio. So it's
a
just
specific,
doing a little bit of research.
Yeah, and so it's a specific training that you get to teach trauma-informed yoga. Is that what I'm getting?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what would the experience be for somebody that comes into, let's say, your class?
Yeah.
Someone walks into the class, paint the picture for someone who's never maybe even been to a yoga class in general, and then paint the picture for your specific type of yoga.
Yeah, so for me as a teacher, it doesn't matter. I do not care if you can touch your toes. I don't care if you like to do down dog or if you can stand on your hand. It's not about that at all. The experience that I want to create for every single student coming to my classes is a safe, supportive, empowering space. And I love teaching so much. And to me, it's not just about, getting strong and getting flexible. That's great, wonderful. But for me, it's really about a journey. Every yoga class is a journey where we go inward and we see what's going on in there and we explore it. So the thing about yoga I find really powerful, and what I try to create in the space that I hold, is when we are not on our yoga mat, when we're in our day-to-day lives, we have our relationships to distract us, we have our substances to distract us, etc. We have our addictions, and then we come to this yoga class, and it's just us and our body and our breath on our mat. And that can be extremely terrifying, because it's quite possible for a really long time we were using those things to divert and distract and to numb out. So when you come to my classes, I just give you permission to, when you notice things that you're starting to feel, lean into it or not. It's okay to not be ready to feel things. Sometimes if you come onto your mat, you might experience anger for the first time, or grief that you've been running from for a long time. Or the other side of the spectrum, because a part of my journey was self-sabotage, you might experience peace and joy and self-love, and you're not familiar with that, so you might not be ready to really kind of dip your toes into that. So in my class, it's really about exploring, okay, how are you feeling? Leaning into it or not leaning into it, and really just listening to your body and not pushing your body past anything. No pushing or forcing or striving. We do that enough off of the mat.
Yeah.
We leave it out the door. We do not bring it into our yoga class. I give a lot of permission. And the permission that I give is, I'm offering suggestions, but if anything doesn't feel okay for you in your body, you are the boss. You are in charge of your body, which again is really empowering, because for some, depending what we're in recovery from, for some, we actually at one point weren't in charge of what was happening to our body. So being able to take that power back is so, so healing and important. Yeah. So some people come to my class and they weren't planning on doing this, but some women will come to my class and I will let them know, if you want to stay just lying on your side or on your back or in child's pose for the entire class, do that. And some women do. And at the end of the class, they'll come up to me and they'll say, I wasn't planning on doing that, but that was exactly what I needed. I needed someone to give me permission, to give myself permission to just breathe for an hour or to just be still and to not move for an hour or whatever it might be. So there's there's lots of permission, and it's a lot of just reconnecting with your body and with your breath, and you're surrounded by these like-minded, like-hearted, amazing women who we all have different stories, but the core of it is the same, and we don't even need to say anything. We can just look at each other across the room and know, like, I get it, I see you, and it's beautiful.
And when you're talking about I see you, it makes me, it just reminds me again, so many times in these conversations, when I ask about, what tools do you use in your recovery, so often it's that sense of community is so integral to people's recovery. And it makes me think of your classes where if I am in a class where I know other people get me and they get it, I might be more inclined to stay in child's pose for an entire class, whereas I would likely never do that in a traditional yoga class. Like I would always be making sure I'm doing what the other people in the class are doing and keeping up with what the instructor is requiring of us. So I find that offering of permission and that allowance, that is a really special part of what you provide in your yoga classes. I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I know it's what I needed as well, because I come from a dancer background, and a recovering perfectionist background. So when I discovered yoga, I was trying to be that teacher's pet. I was trying to do everything perfectly. I was like, oh, look at me. And I wasn't getting it in the beginning. And then when I finally got it, that's when the beauty and the power of yoga really transformed me.
And is that when then you decided to go and get your teacher training and take it to the next level?
Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. So if people are on the West Coast and can visit you at a yoga studio, where can people find out more about Yoga for Recovery with Taryn Strong?
Yeah, so if you go to our website, we're revamping it as we speak. I'm the co-founder of She Recovers with my mom, Dawn Nickel, and our website is www.sherecovers.co. And you can go there, and we are developing the Yoga for Recovery page right now, but on there we have a list of all of our workshops and our retreats. I'm in Victoria, British Columbia, so I teach locally here as well. I'm on Instagram. Taryn Strong is my Instagram name, and that's my real name, so I always post my schedule there as well. And I also am, they've been recorded and now they're being edited. I am going to be releasing Yoga for Recovery videos, so we'll have some online yoga for everybody. Yoga for Recovery for everybody to enjoy as well.
Amazing. And will that also be on the sherecovers.co website?
We believe so. Yes, I think so. We're just figuring out the logistics of all that right now.
Okay, so depending on when you are watching this video out there, take a look at sherecovers.co, and if the site's been revamped and Taryn's videos are elsewhere, there will be links to direct you to where they are at this time. So that is awesome. So now that we've kind of covered off what you're super passionate about right now, I know there are so many other things going on with She Recovers, and we are going to be chatting with your mom, Dawn Nickel, about the retreats and also the coaching certification that She Recovers has launched in the last year. So we'll cover those off with your mom. But what I'd like to do right now with you is, if you don't mind, go back to your childhood and walk us through your story so that we can connect with you a bit deeper and follow along. And then that'll bring us full circle at the end to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Taryn.
I'll try to keep it short because my mom always laughs at me because when I talk about my story, all of us with our story, there's so many layers and so many twists and turns. So
and I'm going to give you the permission,
yes,
Miss Recovering Perfectionist. You don't need to keep this short. People that are dialing into you and connecting with you don't need you to rush through. So however your story comes out and whatever pieces you want to include, feel free. I want to give you permission to do that.
Thank you, Sarah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
So like I have mentioned, I grew up with parents in recovery. They entered recovery when I was 4 years old. And my mom and my stepdad, they used 12-step programs for their recovery. This was the 80s as well. So that's what was available. As well as my mom did go to treatment and, of course, the therapy as well. So my first, and I always tell people this because I just think feel so lucky. My first and earliest childhood memories are of 12-step meetings. And I remember sitting in these rooms, and keep in mind, again, this was the 80s, so you could still smoke in these rooms. And I remember being 4 and looking around and just knowing that these people were cool. Like just knowing that the people I was surrounded by were just real, raw, vulnerable, authentic people.
Cool.
I was seeing, you know, these big biker dudes, all these tattoos, crying and being vulnerable, and seeing, you know, like my mom bringing her kids to meetings and meeting other kids. I just knew back then that recovering people were my people. And I mean, our extended family, all through my life growing up, were the people from the 12-step program. So we weren't really close with our family. So my aunts and my uncles and etc. Those people were sponsors and sponsees of my parents. So growing up, it was all 12-step programs and campouts and meetings, etc. So you would think that growing up in a recovering home, I mean, I don't remember ever seeing my parents under the influence. It certainly was never, because I was 4 when they got clean. And also, yeah, it was never around the house. So people were often surprised to hear that I did find my own, I veered off on my own path at one point. So I believe that happened, of course, because of genetics. I mean, of course, I grew up in this recovering 12-step home, but genetically, I had that predisposition. So the first time I drank was the day before my 13th birthday. And like I've mentioned, I was a dancer. And I remember the first time that I felt the effects of alcohol. I felt this confidence that I had been seeking, because being a competitive dancer, I would kind of fake that confidence when I was in competitions, but then I found this kind of liquid confidence, this liquid courage.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, that was wonderful. That's great. I get it.
And can you share with us how that first drink got into your hand? Like what was the scenario?
You know what? I don't know where we got it. I'm going to assume that one of my friends stole it from their parents. I always felt guilty because I could never steal booze from my parents' liquor cabinet because my parents never had a liquor cabinet. So it would have been one of my friends from their parents or an older sibling.
Okay.
I do remember it's one of those 2-liter coolers. I think it's called Growers. I think we have in Canada. And just I mean, drinking it as quickly as I could, feeling this false sense of confidence and really enjoying that, but then very quickly after that, puking and blacking out and not remembering anything. I was staying at a friend's house because I was very clever at this age to make sure that anytime I was going to be drinking, I was never going home at night because my parents were in recovery. Sorry, not saying that parents in recovery wouldn't have known this, but my parents were just very tuned in and dialed in, and they were always just so present and clear that anytime me or one of my siblings would come in the door smelling like cigarettes or smelling like booze, they would know, right? So I made sure that I was not going to be going home. And yeah, it turned into my little almost 13-year-old body and not even at this age, couldn't handle it. And it just turned into a really ugly night. So although I loved that initial confidence that the alcohol gave me, I actually, because I wasn't good at it, I didn't like drinking because I could only have a few and then I would puke and pass out. And I was just this teenage girl, and I thought, well, this isn't actually fun. Like, what is the point in this? I tried smoking pot a few times, and again, it just made me antisocial, and I would get hungry. So I was like, what's the point of this? This isn't fun. I wanted to be the party girl. I had this image in my mind that I wanted that outgoing spirit. And I was always really intrigued by cocaine. And am I allowed to say these words here?
You're allowed to say all the words.
Okay.
Yep.
I was always really intrigued by cocaine because that was one of, my parents, my dad and my mom and stepdad, it was their really drugs of choice for a really long time. So I was always curious about it. So fast forward to age 16, drinking isn't doing it for me. Smoking pot isn't doing it for me. I'm curious, and now also I'm starting to be curious about kind of that rave culture and the MDMA and ecstasy and cocaine. And I grew up in a really small town in Alberta. None of my friends were doing these things. So I somehow was very resourceful in finding out how to get it And I was 16 and I had a car at this point, just like a little something. And I drove to the next town and got it. Like looking back, that just blows my mind that I did that, but I did. And the first time that I did cocaine, I had this feeling of, this is what I've been looking for. This is it.
Mm-hmm.
It gave me everything that I was looking for. It gave me that, again, false sense of confidence. It made me feel like I was outgoing. It helped suppress my appetite, which was really great for my 16-year-old body, which was going through hormonal changes that I wasn't appreciating. And also, again, I was still a competitive dancer. So having something that helped me not have an appetite was perfect. And also it was giving me this energy to keep up with at the time, I was this 16-year-old. I was an amazing student. I was a competitive dancer, and I was playing piano through the Royal Conservatory of Music. So cocaine was helping me sustain that for a little bit. It was giving me the energy to do all the things that I loved doing.
Wow. Can I ask, did your mom, only because I know how close you two are now, did she have any inklings that, because you said she was really tuned into the smell of cigarettes or alcohol, like she would know what was going on. Was she tuned into all of this? And was she tuned into your need to, you talked about wanting to be, the perfectionist that you were, like, was she tuned into how competitive you were and wanting to be that kind of person?
She was definitely tuned into that. And I was really, really fortunate that my parents were always so supportive and always said, if this is in terms of dancing and being competitive, if this isn't fun for you anymore, you don't have to do it. If you're not enjoying it, don't doing it. If piano and dance is too much, don't do them all. Like they were always, I was so lucky because I would see the stage moms that I was surrounded with at the dance competitions. That was not my family at all. My family was always, if you love it, do it. If at any point you don't love it, don't do it.
So can I ask, did you love it?
Yes.
You did. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, I did. Absolutely, I did. Absolutely.
Like you love the piano, you love the pressure, you love the dance.
Yes.
These were things that pushed you and that you felt good about.
Absolutely. 100%. 100%. So my cocaine addiction, it happened fast. Like it happened really quickly. So my mom found out. She didn't know. She wasn't really clued in. Because I was really good at hiding it. I didn't have to, I would drive still, right? I wasn't having to hide the smell of anything because cocaine doesn't smell like anything to them when you're not doing it. So it happened really quickly. And what happened was the school, I guess counselors, we would call them, they caught wind of the rumors that, because now my friends were doing it with me. I was kind of the leader of this new drug revolution in my school. And the school found out and they brought me in and asked me. And I denied. And then later the school counselor told my mom that I gave an Oscar-winning performance when they were asking me about drug use and if I had anything to do with it. And they believed me. And they told my mom, quote unquote, Taryn gave an Oscar-winning performance. So yeah, no, my mom, they were clueless. I was so good at hiding it. I was so good at lying. And then what happened for me was I stopped going to school though. I stopped showing up for work and I started dating the drug dealer because how else, I'm a 16-year-old girl without a job. How am I going to afford this habit? So I started dating the drug dealer and ran away with him a few times. He lived in the other city, Edmonton, Alberta. And lived with him, wasn't really living with him, staying with him, I guess I should say. And we started exploring crystal meth because then, of course, now both of us can't afford these habits. So crystal meth was something that was cheaper and lasted longer. So mom found out about, of course, before I was running away with the drug dealer, mom had heard about it in the grocery store, in the local grocery store. She was buying groceries. And the cashier was like, did you know that your daughter is dating blah, 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 and he is a drug dealer and your daughter is doing drugs? Oh. So that's how my mom found out. Bless her poor sweetheart.
Honestly.
So when she confronted me about it the first time, I'm pretty sure, and I can't remember, this part's a bit hazy, I'm sure I must have denied it. But then I did come clean about it. And they were like, okay, well, what can we do? But I wasn't ready yet. So ran away, but with the drug dealer. And then my kind of come to moment, my aha moment in that was we were in a really grungy, dingy hotel room in Edmonton. And I remember sitting and I was surrounded by all of these 17-year-old wannabe, I call them wannabe gangsters, because they were just getting into the selling drug scene. They were just getting into the now they're buying guns scene. And I remember just sitting there and thinking, Taryn, this is not how it's supposed to go for you. This is not this. And I was just scared. Like I was, up until then, I was so reckless. And I was like, I'm never gonna, how we are at that age. But then I had that moment where I was like, I am going to die. This is not going to end well for me. So luckily, and what I truly believe was the only reason that I was able to go home and start that first path of recovery is my parents had always said, I mean, they were so lucky. They had their own recovery and they had their recovery community and they had their recovery support. And they always said to me, we are here. We love you no matter what. We love you unconditionally. When you're ready to come home, please come home. There was really nothing else they could do because I was at that age where they couldn't get the police involved or anything. So they kept that open door and told me they love me unconditionally. And when I decided to go home that day, I believe it was that day, I knew that there would be no shame. I knew they weren't going to shame me. And I really feel like if I at any point thought that my parents were going to shame me or, be mad, I knew they were disappointed. I knew they were worried and all those things, but I really felt like them not shaming me was what helped me go home. So I went home, and then of course there were consequences. They took the computers away, the cell phones away. I had 2 therapists. So I had a drug therapist, I had a family therapist, and they were taking me to 12-step meetings as well. So that's when I was 16. And then, so long story short, that was the 16. I got clean. I was able to graduate. We don't know how, but somehow I graduated. I finished grade 11 through homeschool, and then I got to return to school for grade 12 and graduated. So then I was clean and sober for a few years.
And you're like 16, 17, 18, 19 clean and sober, like young clean and sober.
Yeah.
How was that for you?
You know what? It was great. I never came out and said, oh, I'm clean and sober. I didn't think of it like that. I just stopped. It wasn't for me. And I had really amazing friends who saw me go through what I went through and were so protective of me. And I was so lucky. I mean, I remember being in high school and being a grad and being the only person not drinking alcohol and going home early. And it was fine because of the amazing support that I had around me. And then though, when I was 20, and looking back on it, I didn't realize that this was happening at the time, but looking back, I can now see. When I was 20, my mom got diagnosed with cancer, colon cancer. And we thought we were going to lose her. We almost did. There was a situation where the tumor was blocking her and she was within an hour of dying, according to the surgeon. And it was, this is our mom. It's my mom. And up until that point, my mom was superwoman. She never got a cold. I never see her, So to have that realization, which I guess, happens in adult life, it didn't happen until I was 20, that, oh shit, our parents aren't going to live forever. What? That really rattled me. And so looking back, I realized that I started, my sister and I, and my cousin at the time, we were living together. We started binge drinking quite heavily. And at the time, I just thought, well, this is what 20-year-old girls do. There's nothing wrong with it. Like, we would drink on the weekends and sometimes during the week, but I really didn't see anything wrong with it.
And again, because you have not identified as someone in recovery. You're just like, I was 16, I had this issue, this thing with this guy, we did coke, we did meth, and then I got clean from that, and now I'm just living my life.
Yeah.
And by living your life, people are drinking alcohol around you, and you were just like, okay, that's part of what we're going to do now.
Well, exactly.
That makes sense.
I kept comparing myself. I'm like, well, I'm not doing cocaine or meth. This is fine.
Yeah.
So I told myself, I'm a normie. I can drink like normal 20-year-old girls do. And that's what I did for a few years. And then in my mid-20s, I fell in love and I got married. It was a very, we weren't dating for very long, and then we got married very quickly. And then we weren't married for very long, as you can imagine. But for that time, again, I stopped drinking. This is when, I mean, I suppose this makes sense. I was just starting to teach and developing yoga for recovery. And again, I stopped drinking, and I didn't say I'm in recovery. I didn't identify as being in recovery. And it just didn't appeal to me. I had other things I needed to do. I was working full time, and I was focusing on She Recovers, because She Recovers we had started She Recovers at this point. And I just stopped. So then the marriage ended. And now I'm in my late 20s, newly single. And what do I do? What do my single girlfriends do? We go out drinking on the weekends. Or when I go on a date, how do I calm my nerves from being on a first date? Throw back a few drinks. Yeah. So after my marriage ended, I thought, well, I'm a normie, so this is fine. I can drink. Now, keep in mind, She Recovers, we're a few years into She Recovers. And we would be on retreats, or we'd be at certain things, and the women would ask me, and I was honest, because this is truly how I felt at the time. They would ask, like, what are you in recovery from? Of course. And I would say, well, I'm in recovery from self-harm and cocaine addiction and codependency and trauma. And I'd give them the list, and I would tell them, but I'm a normie. I do drink, but I'm a normie. And everybody would be like, yeah, cool. Because for some reason we think that normie isn't a thing. So anyways, but then I'm not a normie. So what happened was the drinking, of course, got more excessive. And then on one of these drinking nights, cocaine was brought out. And of course, because first of all, I was under the influence, so I didn't have a guard. After, there was no way I was going to say, yeah, no, thank you. So I did it. And then very quickly, again, this was, I think, a 1.5 year or 2 year relationship. Very quickly, drinking and using, not every day, but quite often. And I had a really interesting go with my addiction this last time around, I call it, when I was trying to be a normie.
Well, and I want to ask you about the whole normie thing. So did you know you were bullshitting yourself during that time when you were saying, yeah, I'm a normie, it's no problem, I can drink with my girlfriends going out for dinner and stuff? Or was it hard for you to, like, did you have any of the feelings like I did when I drank, which was I'd look around the table and I'd see everybody's glasses of wine and I'd worry about, am I drinking too quickly? Is it being noticeable? Is there more wine behind me? Like, where is it? And making sure I had enough and making sure that I didn't go too overboard, but that I got drunk enough to feel okay. Like, was any of that coming up for you, or did none of that happen for you and you really were kind of drinking normally?
None of that happened for me in terms of alcohol, because cocaine was my drug of choice. So I never had those thoughts with alcohol around me. It was always like that with any type of drug other than pot around me. So that's how I felt with, like, cocaine or MDMA or psychedelics. Like, it was, those were what I was concerned with. Am I doing too much? Do I have enough? Is this gonna last? Am I doing more than everyone else? Am I doing enough to be okay?
Yeah.
So for me, and then I tried this period where I was like, okay, well, I'm not gonna drink. I'm just gonna do these drugs without drinking. And then I tried flipping it, and I tried to find the perfect equation. I honestly, like, I genuinely thought I was okay. I would go to 12-step meetings and I would compare myself to the people in the rooms, and I would be like, oh, I'm not as bad as them. Because I was high functioning, but I was like, I haven't lost my job, I haven't lost my car, I haven't lost my house, I haven't lost my relationships, I'm doing great. And then I would go on these retreats and I would compare myself to the women that I was on retreat with, and again, I would be like, I'm totally fine, because I had all these rules I set up for myself. As long as I don't use the nights before I teach, as long as I make sure that I'm clean for a few weeks before retreats. And I was able to stick to those things. And because I was able to stick to those rules, I thought I didn't have a problem. So one of our main guiding principles and intentions of She Recovers is that we don't have to hit rock bottom to pursue recovery in any area of our lives. And that one is so close to my heart, and we have it is because it is such a big part of my story. I hadn't hit rock bottom yet, but I was going to. I mean, it was happening. I kept comparing myself to 16-year-old Taryn, and I was comparing myself to the people in my community. And although it was a slower decline in my adult life, that's exactly where I was headed. Like it
and
wasn't.
Can I ask, did your mom know that you were drinking and doing cocaine during this, prior to going on retreat and during this time?
No, no, she knew I was drinking sometimes.
Yeah.
So when we started She Recovers, it wasn't a problem. After, when I got divorced, we went to Mexico for my sister's wedding, and I drank. It was all inclusive in Mexico. So that week, my mom witnessed what Taryn drinking was like for a week. And yeah, so she was really, really concerned and really worried about me. But I was able to bullshit her and be like, oh, well, that was just because it was Ashley's wedding and the cousins were there. And that was just a one-time thing.
All inclusive.
I'm all inclusive. It was my sister's wedding. I was celebrating. What I was really doing was numbing out the shame and embarrassment I had over my marriage ending so quickly. You know what I mean? Looking back on it. But no, my mom didn't know. Like, she thought that maybe I had a few drinks here and there because that's what I would tell people. Or not here and there. She knew I would drink here and there because that's what I was telling people. And that was the truth. I wasn't lying, but I was only lying to myself about how you're not a normie and this isn't normal. And I had my boyfriend was, he was the guy who was always being really honest with me, telling me the truth that I didn't want to hear, so I hated him for it. He was always telling me this is not okay. You are not in integrity. This, like, what would your gals that She Recovers think? Like, you need to talk to your mom about this. I'm really worried about you. And I hated him for it because I knew he was right. Like, I knew. Because then it got to a point where every time I drank or every time I used, the emotional hangovers and the shame and the guilt that I would feel were crippling. I had no self-worth. I had no self-esteem, no self-confidence. I was just, I was so down and just, it was the emotional hangovers that I couldn't handle anymore.
And so when did you meet this guy, and was he how long were you two together?
Well, interesting story. We were together for a few years. We partied together. We were, we partied together. That's what we did. I partied more than him. That poor man. And then, so we were together, and then we broke up, and we actually have just reconnected over the past few months. We're both, I've been in recovery for a few years now, and he's been in recovery as well. So we ran into each other, and we're so surprised to hear about each other's, where we're at now compared to where we were before. So we've reconnected.
That is awesome. No matter where that leads, I just think that's really exciting, because it kind of allows us to come kind of full circle with certain relationships in our lives that sometimes feel like they've ended off, and we're like, I feel like there was more there. So I'm excited for you. I like that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, so keep going with your story. I'm loving it.
Well, I think that's it. So then I got to the emotional hangovers and the shame and the guilt, and just, I wasn't in alignment. I wasn't being my true self. And I wasn't able to bullshit myself anymore. I realized, because not only did I realize it, but I had so many people vocalizing it to me. You have a problem. This isn't okay. You need to talk to somebody. You need to tell your mother what's going on. So I had what I call now my coming out was on a retreat in Mexico. I couldn't do it anymore. So we were in a sharing circle. No, first I talked to mom. I sat mom down and I said, Mom, I need you to know this is what's been happening. And she actually did say she had a feeling that something was going on, but what my tendency was when I was in my active addiction is I would hide from my family. Like, I would disappear. Like, I would literally, you couldn't get a hold of me. And then when I came out of my shame spiral, then you would hear from me and I would be, oh, I've just been so busy. So she had a sense. Her motherly intuition was like, Taryn's disappearing. What the fuck's going on? So when I told her, she was like, okay, well, that makes sense. And once again, there was no shame. And I was like, it's been really bad. And I have so much shame. And she said, Taryn, there's nothing that you've done that I didn't do in my life. So don't worry about that. And the shit we did is just the shit we did. It's not who we are. So let's just know that you are loved. And I mean, we're so amazing to have this community of women who are going to help you. And you just need to open up and reach out to them. So at that retreat in the sharing circle, it was like my coming out. I was like, well, everybody, at the beginning of the retreat, I shared that I'm in recovery from codependency and blah, 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 blah. Turns out I'm also in recovery from substance use disorder as well. And I was so scared to share that. I thought, you think that people are going to throw rocks at you or be like, you're such a fraud. And no, of course not. I have the ability to share my shame and share my story as openly as possible, because every time I do, maybe some people think it, and that's okay if you do, but I get nothing but love back, nothing but we all have our shit, and we're all just doing the best we can. And I know now, and I believe that every single thing in my life that has happened, including that latest bout with my addiction, has put me in the exact spot where I am right now. And I'm so grateful for it, because I now have an even deeper understanding and more compassion. And it sounds ridiculous, but I'm able to be better at what I do now because of these experiences that I had. Right?
Oh, it does not sound ridiculous to me at all. That's exactly what it sounds like to me. You use the word compassion, and that is exactly what the word that kept popping up for me as you were sharing. And it's like, you absolutely can have all of that compassion for other people because you've been there. And I think that really is the difference with people who have been there in recovery, that are then using their story and their message to help other people, because we need this kind of community. We need to know that we have brothers and sisters out here that get it, that understand us, and that aren't going to throw stones. So when you said that most of the feedback you get back is love, of course it is, because those are your people that are saying, oh my God, yeah, I get it. Like, I did that too, or I totally feel you, or I've done something similar, or I understand, or I've been there, and me too. That's such the power of it all, and why what you're doing with She Recovers and what you're doing with your Yoga for Recovery is so powerful, because you are reaching people where they are, and they don't feel shamed, and they don't feel judged. And that's just, again, a testament to your mom's ability to share that with you growing up, and both of your parents. And I think it's amazing what you're doing, and well done on being able to come to this place in your life where you are healed and healing and feeling more whole and more like who you really are and who you're meant to be, because you're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah. It feels so wonderful to be in alignment, hey, and to be able to share our stories.
It's the best. It's the real deal. I mean, it's exhausting trying to live that life of hiding. I think anybody who's watching this that has ever struggled with any type of addiction, we all know what that feels like. The hiding, you talked about not being able to be found. I've done that too, where it's like, I can't be text, I don't respond, I don't read, I don't show that the text has been read, because it's like, no, I'll just pretend that I just never saw it, and, not answering the phone, or not, all of that crazy stuff. All of that can just go away, and we can just be who we really are, including being able to say to people, I'm just not able to do whatever that is right now. I need to take care of me. And I think that's a big part of being truly in recovery, knowing our boundaries and setting boundaries that are really important and strong and healing for us, to be able to set those boundaries and to let people know my recovery has to come first. And that might mean that we're not going to get together for that dinner or going out for drinks with friends. I'm rather going to do these other things, and maybe go on retreats or go to a yoga class or do things that soothe and nourish my soul, because without our own recovery, I really truly believe that that's the foundation upon which we create all of the rest of what we do in our lives.
Absolutely. I agree. And thank you for touching on that. It's, for me, having my non-negotiables every day, my recovery toolkit. And of course, obviously, one of them is yoga every day. And the days where I don't get my yoga in, I see how squirrely and how ungrounded and how unbalanced I get. And that's when I seem to be reaching for sugar more on those days, or when I seem to be just slipping back into those unhealthy thoughts and stuck in those loops. So it's for those of you watching or listening that are new in your sobriety, finding your non-negotiables. What do you need to do every day? And it looks different for everybody. For me, it's yoga. For somebody else, it might be going for a walk. For somebody else, it might be meditation or reading a book or having a bath. Or for some people, it's Netflix, like watching half an hour of Netflix a day, whatever you need to do. And making sure that you have your boundaries and that you put whatever you need to do for yourself first before anything else. Because if not, then it's just, we can't stay grounded.
Absolutely. And staying grounded is such a part of it, right? Like, and you talked about all different ways of, in our toolbox, things that we can do. But truly that somatic piece, the body piece, I think is key. So in any way, and Taryn's right, like if it's not yoga, maybe it's going for a walk, but if it's not that, and it might be Netflix, so that might be other things that you want to do, but moving, like you've talked about in your yoga classes, what you see when people can move the pain through, the trauma through, because our bodies hold on to all of that, there really is a transformation that comes when we move trauma through our tissues. I think that there's a lot of research to show that there are huge benefits there, and you see it in your own practice, and then of course in the practice of other people who come to you for teaching.
Yeah, I see it every single class I teach. And there's two quotes I want to share that are my favorites. Nikki Myers from Yoga 12-Step Recovery says, "The issues live in our tissues." And then Peter Levine, he's an amazing trauma expert, and he says that our biography becomes our biology. So every time I teach a yoga class, I see these emotional releases that happen. And for some of you who have wondered if you've been doing yoga and you've experienced this but weren't sure what's happening, is if you've ever noticed, sometimes you might get really emotional and start crying on the mat or in Shavasana, or you might feel anger or grief or any of those experiences. That's because it is literally surfacing so that you can feel it, so that you can release it. And it's, and ways we can do that, of course, are yoga or anything that's getting our bodies moving. Like Sarah said, any somatic type of exercises or therapy. Acupuncture is great as well as massage. Anything that's targeting our connective tissue, our fascia, is going to release that stored stuff in the body.
And that made me just think about your earlier comment about how some people don't want to be touched because of experiencing trauma. And I know there are some tools that you can buy at yoga places and at fitness places. They're like a stick that you can rub on the fascia, and it helps to release a lot of that. It's making me think that for people out there that are watching that are thinking, yeah, I don't want to go to a yoga class, that someone's going to touch me, or if anything, like there are things that we can do to move that emotion through our tissues. And I think that that's really a big key here. But honestly, for anybody who's never tried yoga, most people I know have, but if you haven't, try a class. And I love Taryn's advice on finding one that is trauma informed. If you are looking to get sober, or if you have experienced trauma in your life, really important for you to be able to connect with people that get you and that understand what you're going through. So I think that's really key. Taryn, I want to ask you, what are some other tools in your toolbox?
Okay.
And meditation.
Some of my other favorite daily tools will be essential oils. I love using essential oils all day, every day. They're what I call my new addiction, actually. So essential oils are great. And also it's that connection with other women. Like, I love the dudes in my life. They're all wonderful, but there's nothing like just hanging out with the group of women in a sharing circle or out for a cup of tea or a dinner. Just that time with women fills me right up. And I always feel like when I leave, whenever I've been hanging out with chicks, so empowered and so inspired. So that's a tool in my recovery toolbox, is hanging out with other women.
Absolutely.
Like that, just women only. Essential oils, yoga, meditation. I love self-help books and podcasts. So excited about this Sobriety series with Sarah. So informative. And yeah, I just always trying to learn as much as I can. And that really helps keep me focused.
I love it. I love it. Well, you're obviously living and breathing all of these tools. It's amazing. You exude this kind of radiant energy that I've always been drawn to. I know in New York, we called you the Yoga Pixie. I think that's what you said people were calling you. And it was the cutest nickname because I thought that's exactly it. That's perfect. Yoga Pixie. I love
Oh,
it.
thank you. I love it. I'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another question for you. What is the best thing about being clean and sober?
Oh my gosh. I love it all, and I know that's an annoying answer, but the best thing for me today is being in alignment and not living this double life, not having to hide. Because when I was active, I was just so scared of everything, and I was hiding, and I was afraid of my own voice, and I was scared of being seen. And now that I'm clean and sober, I just get to I'm not afraid of my power anymore, if that makes sense. And I'm not afraid of my voice. And I'm not afraid to be seen. All facets of me. Like, I am the furthest thing from perfect, and I am okay with just having that all laid out for everybody to see. And just, it's the alignment piece and just being my true authentic self. There's nothing greater than that. Like, the weight that has been lifted off my shoulders by just being clean and sober and living in alignment every day it's the best feeling in the world, and it just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
And life is so much fun. I was one of those people that I was like, but how do you have fun? Like, how do people do it? And you just do. There's awkward periods, of course. There's, the first Christmas, the first whatever it is. But when you get through those, you're just so damn proud of yourself and so excited for what's next. And it keeps getting better. Everything in life is better. It really is. It's hard because we feel it all. We're not numbing out at all. So I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's still way better.
It's so way better. I love that answer.
Yeah.
And it also brings me back to your earlier part of your story where you shared that you really lacked confidence as a young girl. And yet this woman in front of me right now, I mean, you exude confidence. Do you feel that internally, that you have been able to fill yourself up and now you are a confident woman that you were always wanting to be when you were younger?
Yes. And thank you for mentioning that. Actually, it was something I was just reflecting on last weekend, that, yeah, I can genuinely say that I'm confident in who I am. I'm confident in who I am. Of course, I have some, body image things that I'm working on and working through, and disordered eating things that I'm working through. But in terms of being confident in who I am and my message and my mission, and I show up and I'm present, and that type of confidence is something I never thought that I could possess. And I don't know when it happened. That's what I was reflecting on over the weekend. I guess I just kind of woke up one morning and was confident in who I am and loud and proud about it. I can't tell you when it happened, but there's definitely been a significant shift, and I owe it all to my recovery.
Well,
and the women in my life who have inspired me and been my cheerleaders and loved me no matter what on this journey.
Oh, so well said. And I mean, it's just so obvious from the outside looking in. Like, it's like, of course that all happened after you got sober and clean and opened up about what was going on. Because while we're in that activity, we can't possibly feel good about ourselves. We're not proud of ourselves. We're embarrassed. We're ashamed. We feel like we're doing things wrong. We know we're fucking up, but we just don't know how to fix it. And there isn't an opportunity for us to feel really confident and wonderful about ourselves when we're stuck in all of this other, miring stuff. So, I mean, it totally makes sense, but I understand also not really knowing when that day happened. Like, when was that all of a sudden the light bulb turned on or the flip was switched? But no matter what, it's clearly happened. And I'm so glad it has. You have every right to feel confident. You're an amazing, amazing, inspiring woman. Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for everything that you're doing. All of the wonderful, wonderful work. We're so lucky to have you in our community. You're such a beacon.
Well, I love you dearly. I want to ask one more question, and I borrowed this one from Oprah. What do you know for sure?
What do I know for sure? Oh my gosh, what a powerful question. What I know for sure is that no matter what, individually and collectively, we're all going to be okay. Like we are all, and I know for sure that we're all worthy of whatever it is that we desire in whatever capacity. We are worthy.
Mm. That almost brings me to tears, and I don't even know why. That shouldn't, just the worthiness piece. I think that I've worked on that for a long time in my own life, and feeling unworthy is a big part of my story. And it's something that I continue to work on, but something like you were sharing about the confidence, where all of a sudden that day came where it was like, I am worthy of these things. I do deserve to have a good life, and I can create whatever it is that I want to create in my life. And I think it all comes though when we hit that place, whether it's a rock bottom or whether it's not, that place where we surrender. And I'm just so glad that you found that time that you did surrender, and you are now doing all of the amazing things that you're doing. So to follow Taryn Strong, as she mentioned at the beginning, it's sherecovers.co. You can follow her on Instagram and everywhere else at Taryn Strong. Once again, Taryn, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
Awesome. To get access to all of the free videos and interviews, visit sobrietystartshere.com.